illegal, what make you praise the soul. Illegal, what make you praise the soul. I make money down and a man hold me hand and I make a praise the soul. I make money down and a man hold me hand and I make a praise the soul. Stupid Gary, let's shame mommy, go marry, for one gold ring, stupid gold ring, stupid illegal, what make you praise the soul. Illegal, what make you praise the soul. This make a praise and that make a praise and this make a praise the soul. This make a praise and that make a praise and this make a praise the soul. Illegal, what make you praise the soul. Illegal, what make you praise the soul. He make a praise and she make a praise and you make a praise and soul. He make a praise and she make a praise and you make a praise and more. Illegal, what make you praise the soul. 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 Come out to 14 and into 15 and make a praise the soul. Come out to 14 and into 15 and make a praise the soul. Illegal, what make you praise the soul. Illegal, what make you praise the soul. I make money down and a man hold me hand and I make a praise the soul. I make money down and a man hold me hand and I make a praise the soul. Stupid Gary, let's shame mommy, go marry, for one gold ring, stupid gold ring, stupid illegal, what make you praise the soul. Illegal, what make you praise the soul. This make a praise and that make a praise and this make a praise the soul. This make a praise and that make a praise and this make a praise the soul. Illegal. Illegal, what make you praise the soul. Illegal, what make you praise the soul. Come out to 14 and into 15 and make a praise the soul. Come out to 14 and into 15 and make a praise the soul. Illegal, what make you praise the soul. Illegal, what make you praise the soul. I make money down and a man hold me hand and I make a praise the soul. I make money down and a man hold me hand and I make a praise the soul. Stupid Gary, let's shame mommy, go marry, for one gold ring.
Yeah, my name is Jacinty Caldata Francis Vietnam, and since 1965 I become a voter, and I always place my X next to the cup. And what they are doing today, I can't take it. So I have no more vote to give to PPP anymore. I'm not going to vote anymore no more. If they have to lose by one vote, they're losing it by data.
How old are you?
I'm 28, sir.
And where do you live?
In PT.
You own your own home?
Not as yet.
Apply for a house lot?
Not yet.
Well, sit down. You're not participating on the enhancement of your own life. At 28 years, you should be making better life decisions. Think about it. Thank you. Bye.
Such a ridiculous statement. Good night to all of you. Every single one of you, wherever you are. Thank you for sharing the link. We appreciate it. Thank you also for your dedication, and thank you for not filing an injunction to stop this program tonight. With us here on 107.1 FM is no stranger to you guys, the youngest General Secretary of the People's National Congress, when it was the People's National Congress under President Forbes, Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham, Prime Minister of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. Well, former Prime Minister, former Mayor of Georgetown, the longest serving Mayor of Georgetown. All the descriptions we have for him tonight. No stranger to you guys. Elder of the People's National Congress Reform, Hamilton Green. I'm not sure. I got to ask him when I see him his birth certificate to see whether it is Hamilton Bilal Green or is it Hamilton Anthony Green. The Honorable Hamilton Green. Good night to you, sir. Good night, sir.
Good evening, my brother.
What's your middle name? I mean, it's not like it's relevant, but I notice it's Bilal. Is it still Bilal?
No. That was a period of my life when I was still studying religion. Today, I worship it, everyone and anyone, once they point their faces towards the Almighty.
Once they point their faces towards the Almighty. All right, Mr. Hamilton Green, former Prime Minister of Guyana, is with us this evening. Former Mayor of Georgetown as well. How have you been keeping, sir?
Sorry?
How have you been keeping?
How was the day?
How have you been keeping?
Oh, well, as I told you before, my wife is in charge of that aspect of my life.
We're getting a slight feedback from you. I don't know why. Maybe you'll have to check with your press secretary or your general secretary.
Jen.
Yeah, we'll be back with the former Prime Minister and former Mayor of Georgetown, Hamilton Green, while we allow his press secretary / general secretary to fix. We're getting kind of like an echo, right? Are you guys getting that kind of like a scrambling? It's Guyana under the corrupt PPP regime. That is what it is. So let's head back to Georgetown. Loud and clear. Are you hearing me now, sir?
I'm hearing you now.
All right. Let's begin. I want you to listen to this here, sir. Listen to this. And I want your comment, please, about Irfan Ali insulting a young man at his press conference.
How old are you?
I am 28, sir.
And where do you live?
In Kitty.
You own your own home?
Not as yet.
Apply for a house lot?
Not yet.
Well, sit down. You're not participating on the enhancement of your own life. At 28 years, you should be making better life decisions. Think about it. Thank you. Bye.
Mr. Green, what is your take on that insult to that young man?
It's unfortunate. It's sad. It demonstrates that our illustrious president is unaware of his responsibilities as the head of state. It points to a cultural situation which is unfortunate, and I would be kind to say he doesn't know better, and perhaps we can forgive him and hope that someone who is culturally emancipated will occupy the lofty position of president after 2025. Obviously, he doesn't know better, and we must forgive him.
Interesting. Doesn't know better. You are correct. He doesn't know better. Talk to us briefly about the positive days, those positive days, those productive days under the PNC when tuition at the university level was free. But And then we go to when the PPP took over. Unfortunately, they just got rid of free tuition at the university level for 20 something years. Talk to us about the PNC years when university education was actually free and how effective that was and productive for our nation.
Well, Burnham understood the importance of human development, not by rhetoric, not by propaganda, not by tricks, but by going, as we say, walking the walk. And so, unambiguously, he articulated a position, and we didn't have the money we have now, of free education from kindergarten to university. The idea behind that was to give every child in this country an equal opportunity to develop to their full potential. Before he passed away in 1985, he also established President's College to underpin the idea of free education, where kids who entered the secondary school for the first time, their parents will have no bother about food, clothing, housing, etc. And that is a legacy that we must not forget. And I repeat, at a time when we did not have this abundance of money from oil, gas, gold, etc., flowing in abundance and being improperly used by our current administration. It's a sad and sorry situation. And when you hear the present government talking about easing on fees, they're being either forgetful or at best hypocritical. All they need to do with this abundance of money is to follow the footprints established by Fox Burnham. Free education from kindergarten to university. It not only allowed our young people to have an equal opportunity, but with his program for sport and cultural activity, it also allowed our young people and the nation to release their creative energies, without which a nation, particularly with our size and geographic location, is unlikely to fulfill its full potential. Very briefly, that is my comment to answer your question.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hamilton Green. And for those of you who are now joining us, good night and welcome to Straight Up. All right, so we heard during the 2020 elections, the PPP promised part of their manifesto. They've been lying all along. They haven't fulfilled probably 3/4 or 98% of what they promised. Part of what they promised was free tuition. They didn't tell the people, especially young people, that they took that away when they took office in 1992, maybe a year and so after they took away free tuition at the university level. They promised that they are going to allow free tuition at the university level in 2020. Now it's over 4 years. Are you surprised that they have lied to the people thus far? No reintroduction?
Why should we be surprised? You have an administration that their competence is within the realm of propaganda, reminiscent of Goebbels and the other chap from the United States. And they believe that by employing experts in the field of information and propaganda, they can fool the people all of the time. But they ignore the maxim that you can fool some of the people some of the time, but not all of the people all of the time. And that is their Achilles heel. They feel, and time is run out on them. You see what's happening with several things. The once ubiquitous Mr. Sue is now missed in action. You have their great philanthropist, Mr. Mohammed, and the PS. And what has happened to the Public Secretary is shameful, because Guyana grew out of the British system where there's a clear line and a clear responsibility for public servants, particularly those in the upper echelon of administration. That is, they should be apolitical so that they can carry their duties without political directives and political manipulation. So when you have a permanent secretary, the head of an administration, the head of a vital ministry like Home Affairs, attending a PPP Congress and be elected to the executive of that party, it is an abomination, unbelievable, and certainly not fashioned along the lines of what we call democracy. I said elsewhere, what we're dealing with now is not democracy, but demons gone crazy. And that, I believe, is a mere tip of the iceberg of the way this government is administrating the country. Their rough treatment of our teachers, the people who are responsible for molding the minds of young people, giving them an opportunity to know their history, and literally grooming them to take their proper place in society is unbelievable. I don't know at any time in my career, which spans over 70 years, that a government has been so unkind to teachers whose only crime is to ask for a living wage in circumstances where the price of every item is going up and up. And I know of teachers who have had to turn to vending on the streets so that they can balance their budgets. And you have a government that instead of calling the teachers union and say, look, you want 10, we offer you 5. They do all sorts of fancy footworks to punish the teachers, using at one time an excuse that the secretary of the teachers union is a member of parliament on the PNC side, forgetting that the president of GAU, a PPP union, is also a member of the PPP in parliament. A complete absurdity, unbelievable. And I hope that time will tell that even their ardent supporters will recognize their hypocrisy and their dishonesty. Then they go to their Congress, which they boast was the largest Congress. Big don't make good, you know, and excise from their constitution words about Leninism and socialism. And I'm very happy to note that a former president, Donald Ramatar, homed in on this nonsense. Because what we see and what is evidence, what is patent, is a government that has gone dead right, and I mean dead deliberately, working only in the interests of the capitalist class. Both Jagan, the founder of the PPP, and Burnham must be turning in their graves. But that is how the cookie is crumbling in our beloved country, Guyana.
Thank you so much, Mr. Green. The cookie is crumbling indeed. 27 minutes after 9 o'clock. If you just joined us, good night. Mr. Green, on the screen, Lemon, our operator, is about to put up, and thank you so much, Lemon, the condition of Georgetown. Garbage all over the city. They are starving the city council again, starving them of hundreds of millions of dollars. This wicked and corrupt PPP are back to their old tricks again, just like when you were in office as mayor of Georgetown. Are you surprised that they're starving the city, starving the people of monies, and the people can't even clean the city? It's gone back to the garbage city, so to speak, again?
Nothing surprises me. Nothing surprises me. It's a pattern well established, reminiscent of the old colonial system and the dictatorships of people like in Italy, Mussolini, and Hitler, where all they are concerned about is what they wish to do. And if they can't control absolutely a municipality, a local authority, they set out to punish that municipality and using a massive propaganda machine, well funded, try to prevail and to persuade people the reason why the streets are dirty, garbage not picked up, is the fault of the PNC majority at the Georgetown City Council. And I hope that at the next stage, with activities such as yours, that the people will not forgive them, will not forget this debauchery that is taking place in our city. I have said before that, like the smallest enterprise, the management of a city depends on three things: the availability of money, machinery, and management. There is no shortage of money, and therefore machinery can be available. But so long as they adopt the attitude that they must control the management, you have this difficulty. It's the same thing with GPL. We don't know how many billions are being spent. But in the area where I live, I've still got to find money to buy diesel. Thank God I have a generator. But my neighbors who live in the area who don't have generators complain, food spoiling, the discomfort and the dislocation of daily life. So they bring a ship in from Turkey, I think. I don't know if it's a turkey that you cook or what. And they promised improvement. But Mark, so long as they don't attend to management, all the billions being wasted in the electricity sector will continue. And again, this is a microcosm of what is happening in our beloved country. And it pains me that our people have been so quiet. In a piece recently, I said, and I thank you again for your constant effort, we cannot afford today the luxury of silence. We've got to speak up within the law. to let these people who really feel that they have all of us under control, they feel with a filthy lucre they can, and a few bits of cook up in a box now and then, and some money to give as cash grants, they can control the people of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. And our duty, Mark, is expose this indecency and this assault on our people and not allow it to go unattended.
Thank you. Well said. You mentioned Sue earlier. Mr. Green, are you surprised that Jack Dale and Irfan and all these guys who spoke about being so eager in terms of conducting investigations into these serious allegations of corruption that were leveled by Mr. Sue and exposed by Vice News, that today Jack Dale is running and hiding from these sort of allegations of serious corruption? Are you surprised?
Absolutely not. You're dealing with the devil in making. So why should I be surprised? Don't expect decency out of these people. They don't understand that concept. And instead of, as my friend Denny would say, unless there's attitudinal metamorphosis, this will continue all the time until the people, including their own supporters, say this is enough. Because what is happening, Mark, is that their ordinary supporters in the urban rural areas are not getting the big bucks. It is going to a chosen few for works that are not properly conducted and not properly completed. And I hope that over the next few months, their own supporters, their own erstwhile friends will recognize the trick that is being bestowed upon them. And Mr. Ali has a very disarming way of speaking, except when he was insulted to a 28-year-old reporter. But as I said earlier, he does know better. You can't take some people out of the muck. That is where they belong, and that is where they will stay.
Mr. Green, we'll go to a videotape of a lady by the name of Auntie Data. You spoke of, and rightly so, of PPP supporters, even in their stronghold areas, they are turning their backs away from the PPP. Over the weekend, Barrett Jagdale had a meeting in Canada, and just a handful of folks turned out. Just a handful. 95% of those who turned out, just about maybe 45 to 50 persons turned out at a meeting in Brampton, Canada. 95% of them are non-Guyanese. Before your comment again on the fact that the PPP is losing massive support, whether inside or outside of Guyana, I want you to listen to Auntie Data.
Yeah, my name is Jacinti Caldata Francis Vietnam, and since 1965, I become a voter. And I always place my X next to the cup. And what they are doing today, I can't take it. So I have no more vote to give to PPP anymore. I'm not going to vote anymore no more. If they have to lose by one vote, they're losing it by data. I have none.
All right, so we heard that there, the small crowd out in Canada, just about less than 50 people turned out. 95% of them are non-Guyanese. You just heard Auntie Data. Let's get your take on that, Mr. Green.
You know, Mark, rent a crowd is nothing new. It has been practiced
Let me just 1 second, and you're really making a thought, but giving your opinion. Sorry that I had to cut. I will remove you from off the screen so that your press secretary can fix it a little bit. All we're seeing is just from your nose up. We'll be back with Mr. Hamilton Green. Perfect. Continue,
You
sir.
more my nose now.
Perfect. Yeah. Tell your press secretary thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Next time, say by royal nostrils. You know the story about King George the Third? He was married to Sophia of Mecklenburg, Germany, who clearly had a lot of the tar brush. And the British press gave him hell. He never left Britain because of that. They said he had some other condition. And described her as having thick lips and large nostrils. Queen Sophia, the wife of George III, who never left England, and after whose name our city, and after who our city was named. But because he was an embarrassment to the British autocracy, some of our textbooks, including those written by reputable people, say that Georgetown was named after George IV. I've done research on this, and that could not be so. Because when we named the city, George IV was Prince Regent. But that's just a bit to lighten the discussion.
And we appreciate that, and you know the name Border and all these places too. All those, a lot of places in Georgetown like Border. Where else? Well, a couple of other streets in Georgetown. They were named after the daughters and the sons of those colonial folks back then. Rich history, but we need to start renaming some of those streets. Back to Barrett Jagdev, the PPP and Air Finale, and the fact that they're losing support. 45 or just about 45 folks attended Jagdev's meeting in Canada, and 95% of them are non-Guyanese. Plus, you heard Auntie Data. Your take on how the PPP has lost lots of support in just about 4 years or so.
Well, I think Guyanese at home and abroad are not foolish people. They're intelligent people. And they're seeing for themselves, one, that this massive wealth, even though we can get much more if we behave as an independent government, or more so, a liberated people, we can get much more. But even with what we're getting, the ordinary, erstwhile PPP supporter is noting that when he goes to the marketplace, he has a difficulty with all this, as they say, fastest growing economy. And that is bothering them. And this is why I feel stakes are high and the time has come for us to dethrone the PPP so that this country, our people, can exhale and enjoy the bounty that the Creator has given us. A bounty that per capita makes us, Guyanese, the richest people in the world, richer than Saudi Arabia, United States, and everywhere else. But unless you have a government that is prepared to take their feet, the iron feet, off the necks of our people, that bounty will not trickle down. And your task, our task, is to repeat it every day and every night so that people understand that they are being tricked, deceived by a government that they may have once supported.
Well said, Mr. Hamilton Green, at 41 minutes after 9 o'clock. Lots and lots of things. Cost of living, everything is so high. The PPP has destroyed the country, destroyed the Linden Highway. Look at what's happening in Linden with the floods out there, and nobody in the regime, no one is talking about compensation for the people of Linden there. Every single day over the past month, they're experiencing flood and all manner of things. No compensation for the people of Linden, those flood victims. Are you surprised, Mr. Green?
Not at all surprised, as I said before. On the question of cost of living, you know what is painful and a form for pity? That in spite of Burnham's best efforts, when you go to the marketplace, I was alarmed when one food vendor told me the pawpaws were imported. Thank God, the pawpaws I have upstairs were ripped from my yard. Compliments of a certain farmer whose name I wouldn't call. But if you look around the streets of Georgetown, the efforts made earlier to feed, clothe, and house ourselves have all been dissipated. And because we have this flush of foreign exchange, we are importing just about everything. And that is scandalous and unfortunate. Yet, Ali roams around the world telling people what a wonderful agricultural program he has in place. Again, a deceit by people.
Lots and lots of deceits indeed. Before we move on to some other questions, people are concerned that Barra Jagdeo has not set foot in the United States in quite a while. And because of the recent sanctions against some folks who are connected to the PPP, lots of senior government officials and ministers, including Barra Jagdeo, are afraid to fly to the United States of America. Are you surprised that they are so afraid even after the sanctions?
Why should I be? You've had a top official, the head of a vital Ministry of Home Affairs, controls your police, immigration, and important aspects of our national life, being held at the airport in New York on the way, ostensibly, to attend a party congress in China. I mean, unbelievable. I don't know ever, since I've been part of a pre- and post-independent Ghana, where a top public servant has had their passport held and questioned at the U.S. port of entry. Not the first time. You remember Ronald Gadraj was superintending the slaughter of many of our young men. He was identified as our High Commissioner to India. He couldn't go through New York or US. He had to spend more money than he anticipated to go through London. And this is but one example of what is happening. And whatever you may think and say of the United States, they will hold firm to their belief in not allowing Guyanese officials to tamper with, destroy, and mangle our financial institution. And that is what you've seen, as I said earlier, the case with the Foreign Secretary and the other gentleman, I think, is the tip of the iceberg. And you know what happens when you run against the iceberg? The Titanic is a good example. The whole ship will sink.
Perfect example indeed. Ronald Gadraj on the screen, for those of you who don't recognize him. He's a former minister of Home Affairs, who is alleged to have been involved in killing squads and responsible allegedly for the deaths of scores of people. He was recruiting folks, death squad individuals, Axel Williams. It is said that Sean Hines and others. But moving away from that, he has been sanctioned by the US, his visas revoked, his Canadian visa, his US visa, his UK visas, all revoked. Sorry, Mr. Green, you said something there.
What's that?
No, I thought you said something else there. That's okay.
No.
Yeah. So let's go to elections now. The PPP and Jack Dale and Irfan, they love to parrot that the 2020 elections were actually about to be rigged by the PNC, AFC, APNU coalition. There is no evidence, none whatsoever, that the coalition attempted to rig the elections. They ran from the petitions in the court, the PPP that is. They do not want the petitions to be heard. They continue to persecute people like Roxanne Myers, Keith Lowenfield, Mr. Mingo, and others. Why do you suppose they're still trying to spread this propaganda about the PNC loving to rig elections without any evidence? Talk to us, please.
Mark, say what you like about the shortcomings of the PPP. They have always been top class when it comes to propaganda and to writing in the Chronicle, the Ghana Times, and their other mouthpieces. You can't fault them. This is a quality they've had for years, and it's difficult to compete with them. They're good at that, and that is their forte, and they use it to optimum advantage to hoodwink and fool our people. We have to, with more programs like yours, to tell people the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. It's a massive task in view of a generation of young Guyanese who have been so battered and beaten. They have turned themselves inwards and not particularly interested in fighting a devil that is at their back door.
Devil indeed at the back door, the rigged elections under the PPP, the stealing of a seat from Region 10 and allowing Sam Hines to sit in that seat. Speaking of Sam Hines, Mr. Hamilton Green, and also I had in mind to mention this guy that we hardly hear about, Mark Phillips. You were once Prime Minister of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. And at that time, I was a little boy. And almost every day we hear about the Prime Minister, Hamilton Green, busy doing things, getting things done. But we hardly hear anything about this current quote-unquote Prime Minister. Is it just that position has become somewhat of a puppet?
I don't want to be unkind, but I think that's an appropriate description. The problem is Hamilton Green had his groundings with and among the people and was known once as Action Green. Burnham never held me back. He allowed me to use my energies to get things done in this society. You mentioned Mr. Phillips and Sam Hines. Nice fellows, very charming chaps. But the point is, they are mere fronts for the image the PPP is trying to portray. In every cabinet, in England, United States, France, everywhere, you have maybe 2, 3, 4 persons who are really, as we say, calling the shots. If you look at the structure of the present PPP, and the one of which Sam Hines was part. The Prime Minister has no clout. Nice fellow, I met him. I like him as a person. You know, within the PP, the three people who are calling the shots, the General Secretary of the PPP, and the structure of the PPP since 1953 is that the General Secretary is the top dog, as we say. And then next you have the President, who has constitutional power. They have the Minister of Finance. And after that, the others are there to carry out instructions of that triumvirate. And I believe any sensible Guyanese would recognize that is the extant structure of our government. And what is awful about all of this is that with the present disbursement of funds with these absurd contracts, we are in fact facing a form of apartheid. An apartheid, unlike South Africa, not based on race, but based on a new class being created, complements of the People's Progressive Party. And that is the tragedy facing our beloved country. An apartheid where some people can do everything, get everything. And all this talk about suspending contracts is only to put wool in the eyes of the diplomatic corps and other people. You've had instances where contractors who were blacklisted, forgive the use of the term black, but we inherited, in a few months' time, still get contracts. And that has been well documented in lectures at Christian Labour College and other places. So that we face a regime where there's an apartheid, not based on race, but a new class that is emerging with a cabal that controls everything. A cabal that they've learned the techniques of the old master. You keep those people at the bottom, you give them a few $1,000s, a few boxes of coke-up, and that will satisfy the stomachs temporarily. But it's no long term. Why do you think they're punishing the teachers? They don't want the teachers to be part of a renaissance to educate our young people, because all of them, without exception, send their children to private schools, and so they are being devilish. They're very, not so subtly, creating a class of underclass people, undereducated people, whose role is at, as Jagger once said, at the bottom of the ladder, as they create a structure by this very clever mechanism of a class structure. Why do you think they're punishing teachers? And you had this nonsense from Jack Joe that they plan to give, I think, $7,000 to each parent. Sure, that sounds attractive. What happens at the end of the day? What happens to our children who will get that money, and maybe some parents, not all, will buy designer clothes and shoes, and the education of the children become secondary. So it creates conditions where with great pomposity and arrogance, the government can announce they bring in 500 health workers from Bangladesh. The writing is on the wall, and we must stand up to this nonsense if we are to benefit from God's bounty to us. And whether you're a Christian, a Muslim, or a Hindu, if you don't pray and make use of God's generosity, the next stage is punishment. And this is why we have to continue the assault and keep telling people what really is taking place in our country. A new form of apartheid. So you don't give the teachers money. Every minister, every top PPP member send their children to private schools. So you create a class structure that is very dangerous and debilitating.
Well said, Mr. Hamilton Green. We'll be right back. Just want to remind you guys about the confusion during the course of the 2020 elections and how the PPP was able to rig the elections. And of course, they were assisted in being installed. Kind of like the confusion. Let's remind you guys about that.
You said valid votes counts, votes cast must, more votes cast must mean valid votes.
And that's the guy who wants to be, or who wanted to be, the president of the Guyana Press Association. Still couldn't get his act together, his words together, or anything together.
You said valid votes counts, votes cast must, more votes cast must mean valid votes. And
No child left behind. Mr. Hamilton Green, your good friends from the Carter Center, they're back in Guyana, and they met yesterday or so, I believe, with the senior members, some senior members, including the leader of the opposition at Congress Place. Lots of people are not have no confidence in GCOM, the leadership of GCOM. They're concerned that the list is heavily bloated. They are calling for biometrics and all sort of things. And even as we are not hearing anything from GCOM, the chairperson of GCOM, we're not hearing anything from the three commissioners who are there to represent the interest of the opposition. Your take on GCOM and the Carter Center back in Guyana, your favorite friends at the Carter Center.
Well, Mark, it is well known that from the time the Carter Center entered our political life, I had a difficulty. I expressed this at the highest level, but no one listened to me. I know history pretty well. It's a guide to all of us. I have nothing against Carter as a person or anyone else. But when he came to Guyana, he came with a mandate for what his office term regime changed. That set up my antenna, and I spoke ad nauseum about this danger. Secondly, those of us who understand US history must know that we have to be very careful in dealing with people who, like their own religion, believe that certain people that they place is not to rise up. The lot on earth is not to rise up. And I don't want to say too much on that, except if you know American history, the Civil War was waged by the North against the South because the South did not want to free the slaves, because in the churches they preached the theology that those black folks there don't deserve a better life. Equality is not a matter to be discussed. And so I had a difficulty with persons who arrived here from the deep south, that they may have come with an attitude which is not propitious, not useful for our people. But those are my personal views, and I believe that history will prove me correct. When our Constitution required that Guyanese, as is the case of the United States, living anywhere, they have the right to exercise their franchise at elections. When you have a gentleman from the deep south persuading, and I use the word persuading in parentheses, our leaders, not me, to dispense with overseas voting, you can begin to paint a picture of some form of destabilization, which in fact occurred.
All right, Mr. Green here at 3 minutes after 10 o'clock. We just have a few minutes. Lemon is signaling that we just have a few minutes. You were General Secretary of the PNC, the youngest General Secretary in the history of Guyana, and very effective too. What were some of your functions, briefly, please, as General Secretary?
What was that?
Some of your functions as General Secretary of the PNC.
As General Secretary, I was in charge of Congress Place physically and dealing with all people who came in from all over the country. I was responsible for ensuring the credibility of the group lists and to ensure that groups functioned everywhere in every part of the country. At one time, in the south of Georgetown alone, we had well over a dozen functional, active, and sometimes vociferous groups. And what has happened, we've lost our way. A lot of us, and I say us deliberately, pin our faith on this new technology of what you call using these
Social media.
eh?
Social media.
Social media. I am from the old school, and I believe there's no substitute for talking to people and touching them in their homes. I remember being in Stanleytown some years ago, and to talk to a family who are busy cooking. I can't cook, but I learned to stir the pot, and further down the street, I learned to change diapers before I had these Pampers, because I wanted people to listen to my story. At that time, some of the comers who were with me complained that I was spending too much of time in one house because they believe in this social media. Maybe I'm old-timeish. Maybe I'm out of sync with modern-day technology. But if I can lean on a man like Barack Obama, part of his success was due to the fact that he was able to touch people physically and listen to them and promise to solve the problems. But again, that's Hamilton Green, and it may not represent a popular or even valid view. I am a humble man, and I say that.
Thank you for your service. Over the past just over 2 years, we have seen the People's National Congress reform lost by way of resignations. Two general secretaries. What is your take on that, please?
I haven't had enough information to give a comment. I hope to speak to all parties involved, and perhaps come Congress this weekend, I may be able to say to them that the party is bigger than anyone else, bigger than anyone's ego. Because I get the impression that may be a stain on the party. You asked the question when I was General Secretary. When I was General Secretary, what matters most was the integrity of the People's National Congress. And all people had people who, when we collecting monies, Gertie or some of those people, pennies turning from all parts of the anatomy. I remember after Congress, I spent hours at the Treasurer's home counting those big jails to take to the bank. I have had complaining to me senior members of this party who complain that they have been asked to make a contribution to the party. In a sense, we may have lost our way, but we have not lost hope. And I hope this Congress, with all its tribulations, will come out that we are at one, and that no matter what, the party is paramount, and that will remain the force to replace the evil empire that we have to live with. And I believe, Mark, if we play our cards correctly, we can dethrone the People's Progressive Party at the next election. That's my hope, that's my dream, and even at my age, I will dedicate my energies towards that objective, getting rid of the evil empire.
Getting rid of the evil empire, indeed. 9 minutes after 10 o'clock. I'm not going to ask you tonight about what is different now in terms of what we're seeing. And people want better from the PNCR, and they're hoping that after Congress that there will be this unification. What makes the party different from back in Hoyt's era when you packed up your Georgie bundle and walked away?
Well, it's a new generation to begin with, new influences, new pressures on young people. I speak to some young people on both sides of the political divide, on both sides of the racial divide. And I get the impression that their concern is their personal upward economic and social mobility. That is, as I said to some of them who speak with me, that's unfortunate, because that mobility which they articulate can either be hindered or hastened by the kind of government that is in place. That will be my message to this Congress. It's not easy, because let me admit, when I was General Secretary, I was regarded as a general. But there are not so many distractions. You didn't have the cell phone. You didn't have all this thing which is progress, but in a sense, it can deflect our young people from the goals and the objectives that will improve their lives. What is bothersome, Mark, is that you live abroad, you deal with people abroad. If we're not careful, we will allow a demographic change. And I hope, for the sake of my children and my children's children, that does not happen. Where very soon, when you look around this country, you will not recognize this is the country we spoke of, one people, one nation with one destiny, and to articulate with pride that we've had 6 people, or Armenians. And as I told a young lady who discussed this part with me recently, when the Africans first landed here, they came as free people in balsa boats to trade with our Armenian brothers. The next arrival here was thanks to the trickery of the Europeans and the chiefs. They came and were enslaved. And when they ran away after this cruel treatment, the European plutocracy used the Armenians to catch the runaway slaves. And when the Armenians complained that to bring back a slave dead or alive was too much, those European slave masters offered the same fee, I think 32 guilders, for the severed right hand of a slave. This has been our history of dividing. And unless our young people understand our history and understand we've got to correct those historical flaws, our chance of development is negligible. Unless we understand that the main political parties sit down around the proverbial round table and say to Exxon and Shell and the others, we want much, much more from this oil which belongs to us, we are not going to get anywhere. So long as the European massa can play upon the weaknesses, the venality of our own people, whether it be Afro, Indo, Amerindian, Guyanese, or Douglas, we will not reach that high plateau that beckons in the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. My dream, Mark, is to beg the Creator to give me a few more years so I can make some contribution to changing this attitude and making the sacrifices of our Indian brothers who came here, our Chinese, our Portuguese, and our African brothers and our Armenian brothers, so that they be the principal beneficiaries of these God-given resources, so that it is a blessing and not a curse. And I know that you will join me in this magnificent crusade.
I recall right where you're sitting there at your study room. You did promise me a few years ago that you'll get us a book, the autobiography of Hamilton Green. I heard somebody in the background say,
I'm delinquent. I have failed many of my friends and family, but I have to start writing.
I know why that came about. Tell her I say good night. Tell her I say, Mr. Green, the PNCR is preparing for Congress. I know over probably a few days back, the Congress, the elders, sorry, of the party spoke about a matter, allegations made against Mr. Norton by another member, that is Ms. Vanessa Kisoon. You did say the elders at the table and others did say that they will speak to all parties involved. Without getting into any details, have you guys gotten to that part where all parties were spoken to?
Well, the NCW, the National Congress of Women, handed this matter to the Council of Elders. We have started to look at it, and our position as I speak to you, we can make no comment until we have all sides of the story told. You know, in Guyana, Mark, a story don't have two sides. It has 3.5 sides, and will be at a grave disadvantage if we make any pronouncement until we've heard and assessed the reliability of what is being told to us. I hope, however, at the end of the process, we can make a recommendation which strengthens and not weakens our party.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Green. I respect the fact that not much can be said about the matter until further notice. As the party prepares for Congress this Saturday, we heard today that the possibility of an injunction, and this is the headline, High Court asked to stop PNCR's Congress in interest of reform, ending division, PPP, PNC named in related lawsuit on preventing unfair elections from infecting general elections. This is kind of confusing to me, but if it's not to you, what is your take on this attempt to have an injunction against this coming Congress? And has it ever happened in the history of the PNC?
I'm not a lawyer, except to say it's a unique adventure. I use the word adventure deliberately, by some set of persons. We look at it carefully, and all I can assert, again, not being a legal person, is that way back in 1953 and 1955, when the PPP was split, that neither party constitutes a legal entity. Now, that's as far as my knowledge goes. And whether the courts can intervene is beyond my competence. I don't know. I suppose, based on the traditional jurisprudence, the court can intervene on any matter. But except to say that, to the best of my knowledge, it's a strange adventure. I can't comment on why, but to the best of my knowledge, both the PPP and the PNC are not legal entities, as is the same with a friendly society or a co-op society that is registered under certain rules and regulations requiring certain things to be done. I can't go further than that. That's a matter for the law, the boys with the law brains.
As we close off with this final question, the fighting, so to speak, the attacks, personal attacks, all sorts of things from all factions, not just one side, as the party prepares for Congress, and even after Congress, as the party and the opposition prepare for general and regional elections. Talk to the leadership of the opposition, of the PNCR. Talk to the supporters of the PNCR, the members. Talk to them in terms of cooling the temperature down. Thank you.
I will.
And when I say talk to them, briefly, those who are watching right now, sorry about that, talk to them briefly, those who are watching.
Well, for me, the party has always been and remains paramount. At this juncture, when we have a glorious opportunity to dethrone the PP, it will be an act of stupidity and folly for us to dismember the People's National Congress for whatever reason. Intelligent men and women must understand there comes a time when we can subordinate our personal proclivities and interests for the greater good. So my message is, whatever may be the concerns, and some of them may be quite justifiable, we don't have the luxury of time to squabble at this juncture. I will close by giving an example that I've given umpteen times. I grew up in a yard in Charleston with 5 dogs. And I noticed they were always fighting, particularly when we threw food outside of the window. But something I learned from my canine cousins is one day the postman forgot to lock the gate, and a strange dog ventured into the yard. Those 5 dogs demolished him, and the dog carts had to come to remove a dead dog. The lesson from my canine cousins is, when there's an enemy at your gate, you don't have time to fight among yourselves. When you destroy that enemy, we can afford the luxury of fighting among ourselves. My lesson to the PNC as we approach this Congress, I wouldn't be surprised if the PPP read into this what may be a fractious Congress an opportunity to call a snap elections. My message is, we don't have time to pride ourselves, even if we're right. When we leave Congress Place, my message will be, we must leave with one objective: to set aside our differences and work hard. Because a lot of people who would like to do things don't know what hard work is. To work hard in the field, office, and factory, so we rid ourselves of a corrupt and an unworthy regime. That will be my message at Congress. And to the people who will listen to your program and elsewhere. We
Thank
have
you so
a serious threat, and we don't have time for nonsense.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister, former mayor, former general secretary, former minister, all these titles indeed. And thank you so much. Thank you so much to your press secretary as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So my press secretary isn't paid, and she's grumbling sometimes.
I realize what's happening there. Give my regards to my friend who always cooked me that nice cook up. Give my regards.
Okay, man. God bless and have a good evening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hamilton Green. Appreciate your time. God bless you. And thank you to your press secretary as well, your beautiful wife, that is. Thank you so much, Dr. Jennifer Bastio Green. Thank you. Thank
God
you.
bless.
Thank you, my friend. Yeah. Hamilton Green there, former Prime Minister of Guyana, former Mayor of Georgetown, a very good friend. You've been, gosh, I'm getting old, friends, for over 30 years. Man, I'm getting old indeed. All right, and to all of you beautiful people, we'll be back tomorrow, same place, same time. Hoping nobody files an injunction against me. Hoping there's no fighting. Hoping there's nobody who wants to take me in the trenches to fight again with them. I'm always ready, but at the end of the day, there's a real enemy, and Mr. Hamilton Green spoke of that real enemy. The demonic forces who are currently in control of Guyana. We've got to wrestle back and take back power from them. It can only be done with unity. If you are divided, don't expect victory. That's enough for now. Be back tomorrow, same place, same time. Ta-ta.
Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, what make your presence so? Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, what make your presence so? Come out to 14 and into 15 and make a presence so. Come out to 14 and into 15 and make a presence so. Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, what make your presence so? Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, what make your presence so? I make money down and a man hold me hand and I make a presence so. I make money down and a man hold me hand and I make a presence so. Stupid Gary, let's shame mommy, go marry, go one gold ring, stupid gold ring, stupid lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, will make your presence so. Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, will make your presence so. This make a present, I make a present, this make a present so. This make a present, I make a present, this make a present so. Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, will make your presence so. Lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, lily gal, will make your presence so. He make a present, she make a present, you make a present.
He said valid votes counts. Votes cast must more votes cast must mean valid votes. Sorry, and he said valid votes counts. Votes cast must more votes cast must mean valid votes. Sorry, and
How old are you?
I am 28, sir.
And where do you live?
In Kitty.
You own your own home?
Not as yet.
Apply for a house lot?
Not yet.
Well, sit down. You're not participating on the enhancement of your own life. At 28 years, you should be making better life decisions. Think about it. Thank you. Bye.
How we gonna do a body man walk right now? You ready? Fuck, so let me go now. Hear me sing now. Body walk, body walk, body walk, everything. Body walk, truck, body walk, body walk, body walk, everything. Body, listen. Body jump, body jump, body jump, everything. Body jump, body jump, body jump.
Yeah, my name is Jacinty Caldata Francis Vietnam, and since 1965 I become a voter, and I always place my X next to the cup, and what they are doing today, I can't take it. So I have no more vote to give to PPP anymore. I'm not going to vote anymore no more. If they have to lose by one vote, they're losing it by data. I have none.
Hey fans, it's karaoke and oldies night this and every Thursday at Club Twilight Sideline Dam, Buxton. Dance to the magical songs of yesteryear by popular DJs and Camps Audio. Admission is free. Come out, let's make memories at Club Twilight Sideline Dam, Buxton North.
don't know what happened. A pound of sugar is $300 already. Flour, everything gone up. Everything just raising. You gotta get about $40,000 for buy good ration. You gotta get 3 man now. A weekend man, a monthly man, and a fortnight man.